While you are stressing over electric bills, chasing dead-end side hustles, and hoping a TikTok algorithm turns you into a millionaire, the Vikings would have laughed in your face. Over 1,000 years ago, in a world freezing cold and actively trying to kill them, they figured out how to build generational wealth with absolutely nothing. No banks, no credit, and definitely no crypto. These weren't just axe-wielding maniacs screaming at the sky. They were the most ruthless entrepreneurs history has ever seen. Men and women who viewed the world as a catalog of resources waiting to be seized. While most of medieval Europe was just trying to survive the winter, the Vikings were thriving, building a financial blueprint so effective that it turned farmers into kings. We are going to break down their 7 deadly tricks to get rich from zero. Strategies forged in ice and blood that are surprisingly applicable to your bank account today. They understood that wealth wasn't about hoarding gold coins. It was about the velocity of goods, the leverage of reputation, and the audacity to go where others feared to tread. By the time we get to strategy number 4, you will be wondering why your current business plan doesn't involve a long ship and a battle axe. But before you can conquer the world, you have to understand the most basic rule of the Viking economy. Money is fake, but value is real. Before the concept of fiat currency ruled the world, the Vikings ruled by the art of the barter, turning raw survival goods into luxury assets. Picture a Viking standing at a bustling riverside market in Novgorod, the air smelling of pine tar and cured meat. As he trades a stack of rough wool for exotic spices brought all the way from the Silk Road, they didn't need a middleman or a banking app. They operated on pure instinct and skill, understanding that a walrus tusk could be turned into a feast and a new pair of boots if you found the right buyer. Everything they touched, whether handmade, hunted in the tundra, or hauled across the violent North Sea, was a potential trade asset waiting to be flipped for profit. Bartering wasn't just a survival skill for them. It was a high-stakes art form where reading a person's desperation was just as important as the quality of your goods. They knew how to assess value instantly, striking deals that allowed them to climb the social ladder one fur pelt at a time, moving from poverty to power without ever touching a coin. Today, this is the equivalent of freelancing without a website or swapping services instead of swiping credit cards. You don't need capital to start, you just need something of value and the guts to ask for what it's worth. But having goods to trade is useless if you are stuck in one village with the same broke neighbors. To get rich, you need a vehicle that can take you to where the money is. To the Vikings, a ship was much more than just a ride across the water. It was a floating money-making machine that acted as the backbone of their entire economy. These long ships were technological marvels, fast, flexible, and capable of crossing open oceans or sneaking up shallow rivers to access markets that no other merchant could reach. A single longship could carry up to 20 tons of cargo. That is roughly the weight of 4 adult elephants, meaning a successful voyage could set a crew up for life. While some used these engineering masterpieces to raid, the smartest Vikings became mobile traders, creating a logistics network that spanned from the ice of Greenland to the heat of Baghdad. Think of it like launching an e-commerce store in the year 900 AD, but instead of digital clicks, you are riding the dangerous currents of the Atlantic. Their ships were so fast and silent that monks in England started calling them sea wolves, because by the time you saw the sail on the horizon, the market was already theirs. They didn't wait for customers to come to them. They loaded up with timber, iron, and Icelandic falcons, and sailed straight into the heart of foreign economies, delivering goods with a speed that destroyed the competition. However, a fast ship is worthless if you are selling junk. The Vikings knew that to command the highest prices, you needed a product that was undeniable. Sure, the raids made the headlines and the history books, but it was superior craftsmanship that built the enduring Viking legacy. Vikings didn't just take stuff, they made stuff, obsessing over the quality of their iron, the weave of their wool, and the balance of their weapons until they were the envy of Europe. Blacksmiths forged hinges and nails by hand in smoke-filled huts, while weavers spun waterproof cloaks that could withstand a storm in the North Atlantic. They didn't aim to mass-produce cheap garbage. They specialized, becoming masters of their craft to create goods that served as currency on their own merit. This is the secret sauce. Viking gear was essentially the iPhone of medieval Europe. reliable, highly desirable, and built to last a lifetime. While we sweat over cheap drop shipping products and Amazon returns, Viking artisans were creating heirlooms that would be traded across continents, holding their value better than gold. The lesson here is brutal but simple. Forget flashy marketing and focus on function, because even in the Dark Ages, quality was the one thing people were always willing to pay for. But trading individual items is small thinking. The real Viking tycoons didn't just sell the product, they controlled the source. Here's where the strategy gets genius. The Vikings didn't just trade things, they traded access and controlled the raw materials at the root of the supply chain. They knew which rivers teemed with the fattest fish, which dense forests held the strongest timber for shipbuilding, and which jagged cliffs hid iron ore beneath their mossy skin. Once they found these resources, they claimed them, sometimes by settling peacefully and sometimes by removing the previous owners with an axe. In Iceland, they didn't just farm sheep. They claimed the land around hot springs, effectively owning the energy and comfort resources centuries before the concept of a spa resort existed. They were the original resource managers, understanding that if everyone wants it and you are the only one who has it, you aren't just surviving. You are negotiating from a position of absolute power. From controlling the flow of walrus ivory to dominating the dried fish market, they leveraged scarcity to ensure their wealth grew while they slept. Today, this translates to controlling the tools others need, whether that's a niche skill, a digital audience, or a literal piece of land. But even with a monopoly on resources, a Viking's ambition was never satisfied with just one location. To truly win, they had to scale. It is easy to think of the Vikings as local northern warriors, but in reality, they were aggressive expansionists who treated the globe like a game of Risk. They didn't stop at the borders of Norway or Denmark. They set sail for Scotland, Ireland, Iceland, Greenland, and yes, they even built settlements in North America, 500 years before Columbus stumbled onto a map. Why risk death on the open ocean? Simple. More land meant more resources, new trading partners, and new streams of revenue that their rivals back home couldn't touch. They weren't reckless wanderers, they were calculated explorers who scouted locations, tested the soil, and studied the weather patterns before committing to a settlement. Every new outpost became a wealth center, a franchise of Viking power that allowed them to scale their operations like an aggressive startup, pivoting to a new market. They navigated by the stars, the currents, and the flight paths of birds, mapping the world with nothing but instinct and memory while we struggle to find a coffee shop without GPS. But you can't be everywhere at once. Sometimes the best way to get rich isn't to build a new farm, but to get hired by the biggest boss in the world. Not every Viking got rich by swinging a sword for themselves. Some got filthy rich by shaking hands and selling their loyalty to the highest bidder. The Varangian Guard is the ultimate example of the gig economy on steroids. Elite Viking mercenaries who traveled to Constantinople to serve as the personal bodyguards of the Byzantine emperor. Imagine a part-time job that lands you in a palace made of gold, armed with a giant axe and a salary that would make a king jealous. Vikings were incredible negotiators who knew how to trade loyalty for access, striking mutual protection pacts with foreign rulers to secure their financial future. They understood that relationships could build empires faster than war, establishing thing assemblies, early parliaments, where disputes were settled and deals were brokered. They knew that it wasn't just about who you knew, but about who wanted to know you because of the lethal skills you brought to the table. Whether it was marrying into powerful families or acting as elite security, they monetized their reputation for violence and loyalty perfectly. And speaking of reputation, that leads us to the final and perhaps most effective strategy of all: weaponizing your personal brand. Let's be honest, the Vikings were terrifying, but that wasn't an accident. It was a carefully curated marketing strategy designed to open doors and wallets. They built a reputation so fierce and legendary that entire towns would surrender and pay Danegeld, protection money, without a single drop of blood being spilled. This was the Viking version of pay up or we burn your village, a brutal but effective business model that relied entirely on the brand equity of fear. They understood that a powerful reputation precedes you, doing the heavy lifting of negotiation before you even step off the boat. But it wasn't just about being scary. Viking traders dressed in flashy silks, wore exotic jewelry, and told elaborate stories to cultivate an air of mystique and power. They created a legend that traveled faster than their ships, ensuring that by the time they arrived, the customers were already awestruck and ready to deal. When your name spreads faster than the news itself, you have the ultimate leverage in any transaction. But none of this, the trading, the rating, the branding, would have worked without the engineering marvel that made it all possible. Their brand spread because their ships moved faster than anything else on the water. You are probably wondering how they built these wooden Ferraris with just hand tools. So just click this video right here to see exactly how they did it.
We go over land, through the forest.